Well, thank you very much for having us. I'm here with Niru, and I'm the Marketing and Admissions Director for Canadian Career College. And today we're specifically here to talk about different forms of funding sources. And we might cover a little bit more than that for the education area. And then I'll ask Niru to talk just a little bit about what we do as far as career paths go. Some of it may not be applicable for some of you, but may be applicable for some of your family members or somebody that you know that needs this type of service. So thank you very much for having us. So let's begin, okay? So first thing I want to talk about is tax deduction. Tax deduction, a lot of people believe that they understand what this means, and not necessarily do they understand the full extent of what a tax deduction is about. So I always start with that because tuition is tax deductible in Canada. What that means is that the tuition part of how much you spend for the education can actually be used against the income that you're generating or that your spouse is generating, and therefore you don't have to pay taxes on that portion. Okay, so to make it a little bit easier to understand, I've made a couple of examples here, okay? And I just used $10,000 as the example because it's a nice round number. So if you actually spend $10,000 on tuition, that $10,000 does become tax deductible. So before we talk about what happens to this $10,000, let's just talk for a second how we pay taxes, okay? So somebody who's earning $40,000 a year, they're at a 21% tax bracket. It means 21% of their income is deducted by their employer, and every month their employer sends it to the government. And then at the end of the year, when we file our taxes, the government matches what we told them that we earned and how much we paid from our companies. It's matched, and it should match. If it doesn't match and there's a shortfall, in other words, we owe the money, then they ask for us to pay. Or if we've paid too much to our employer, they don't ask us for money, they actually send us back a refund, okay? So somebody who's making $40,000 a year at 21% pays about $8,000 a year in taxes. If we take the $10,000 and we take it off the $40,000, in other words, we're showing the government that we didn't earn $40,000, we actually only earned $30,000. Our employer has collected 21% of $40,000 and not 21% of $30,000. Okay, so the difference between the two is $1,700. This $1,700 for somebody who's earning under $40,000, that's how much they get back from this tuition. So they would actually be paying $10,000. They'd actually be paying $8,700, right? Because they're getting back, actually, yeah, $8,300. They're getting back $1,700. Does everybody understand that principle? Now, if we pass it to somebody else in our family who's making more than $40,000 a year, maybe your spouse is making $55,000 or $60,000 a year. Okay, their tax bracket is higher. It's 31%. So I just use the $70,000. I don't know where I got it from. I think that that's an average. So $70,000, 31%. Who's earning this $70,000 is actually paying $21,700 taxes. $21,700 taxes. But if I take the $10,000 off this and make this only $60,000, we actually get back $3,100. So why do I bring this up? Is a lot of our clients are women. We have a lot of programs in the healthcare industry. We do have accounting and payroll. I mean, Nero will go into that. But really, the majority, I'd say 80% of our clients are women. And probably out of the 80% that are women, I'm going to say, I'm looking at Nero, she probably knows this number more. I'm making about 80% have spouses. Am I right about that? And sometimes the spouses are making a decent living, but the wife is either been taking care of the family and now she's ready to go back to work, or maybe now she just wants to work to feel that she's not, she's giving money to the family, okay? So that tax deduction can be used by yourself but it can also be used by your spouse. So when you're looking at how much tuition is, you know, sometimes how things look and what they really are is two different things, right? Actually, I think there are three things. It's how we see things, how you see things, how I see things, and the way they really are, right? So just remember when you're looking at tuition and you're looking at numbers and how it looks, sometimes isn't really the way what happens at the end, okay? Because there are a lot of incentives that the government has that I'm going to tell you guys about for people to go back to school. And the reason that there are these incentives is because we're all taxpayers. And if we're making more money by having a higher paying career or a career that we don't have now, then we're going to be paying the government taxes on that income. And so that's their investment. And in most cases, they're paying taxes for dozens and dozens of years. Everybody okay with this principle? I also want to talk to people about tuition because I've been doing this for 25 years. And what I found is a lot of times when people ask me, how much does it cost? Okay, when somebody says to me, how much does it cost? That means they're looking at it as an expense. Because to me, in the English language, something that costs something is an expense. Nobody ever says, if I'm going to put money away for my retirement fund, how much is that going to cost me? No, because they know that the money that they're putting into their retirement fund is the money that they're going to take out later on. It's an investment. It's not an expense. And when I see people who ask me how much tuition costs, and they look at it as an expense and not as an investment in themselves, I need to change their understanding of it because it's really not the right way to look at things. Things that are an expense lose a value once we buy them. These tables, if they were $200, I guarantee you can get $25 for them right now. So an expense is something that depreciates, something that you invest in grows. Come on in. So something that you invest in, it should be growing with time. So how does education grow? You should be making more money with the diploma than what you're currently making, right? And that increase of income is the return of your investment on the tuition you paid for. And in most cases, our average student is between 30 and 40. They've got at least 20, 30, 40 years of work experience left. And they're going to be paying taxes for those 30 or 40 years. And if they're making an extra $8,000 a year because they have our diploma, they're making it over 30 years, $8,000. This is like $320,000 more income than what they would have earned if they didn't. Now, I got to tell you something. Like I said, I've been in the business for 25 years, and I've seen all sorts of things. And when I was introduced to this philosophy, I'll be honest with you, I thought, what a great sales tool, right? And then I thought, you know what? This is not a sales tool. This is the real truth. The real truth is, if I'm making $22,000 a year or $24,000 a year, and I become a bookkeeper and I'm making $38,000 a year, an increase of $10,000 or $12,000 a year, by investing in tuition, I'm going to get that $10,000 to $12,000 every year. So maybe the first year I get back my investment, my tuition. And then for the rest of my life, I get to enjoy that difference that I wasn't making. That's an investment in education. And one other thing, education is something that nobody can take away from you, right? So when you're looking at education, please look at it as an investment, whether it be for you or for your children, your grandchildren, whatever it is, it really truly is an investment and not what it cost. Now, when somebody says to me how much it cost, besides the fact that it tells me that they're looking at tuition as an expense, it also tells me that they've got to know the value. None of us buy anything without understanding the value. If there's not a good enough value, we're not going to buy. I don't think any of us are different, right? So that's my little talk on tuition as an investment. So let's talk about different ways to pay for education. One of the things that was on your list, it was EI. So why don't we talk about EI a little bit? And then we'll talk about other things like second career and how OSAP works and things like that. But the reason I want to talk about EI is because EI really has very little about going to school, believe it or not. As a matter of fact, if you're on EI, employment insurance, you're not allowed to go to school. Okay? You're not allowed to go to school because when you're on EI, they expect you to be looking for work. And in their mind, if you're going to school, how are you going to be looking for work? So it doesn't. So there are other things that you can use that replace EI. One of them is second career, which I'll talk about. But you need to know that EI isn't the end result. It's something that it's there as a safety net, but there are many other safety nets in the process. I'm not quite sure what you felt that I needed to talk about with EI, but does anybody have any questions about EI? I mean, I'll try to answer them. Does everybody understand how it works?
That I know how it works, but not I've seen that many times. EEI even offers you certain courses to go, and they pay for it.
Not anymore, and I'll explain to you I don't want to go off in a direction, but let me explain to you something. Second career funding is a provincial initiative that started about 14 years ago. And then because it was so successful, the provincial government was able to convince the federal government to take all the federal government funds and instead of putting them in EI and putting them in other areas, to funnel them all into second career funding. So all of those federal government, because EI is federal, okay, basically they took those budgets and gave them to second career and let the provincial government take care of it. Okay, so yes, at one time, when I was on EI 25 years ago, before I started doing this, and they did have things like that because there was no second career. So the EI had an HR area that would do stuff like that. You're going to find that you will be very successful finding funds through EI. Okay, so you're right in principle, but there's no budget. Okay, okay. There's just no budget. But there's other ways to go to school. It's the EI. I actually don't think second career is the best way to go to school. That's my opinion. The best way to go to school to me is to go to your RRSP, take it out tax-free, and get the tax deduction I was telling you about, and then put the money back in the account. Pay it back. Why? Where can you make 21% on your money in a retirement fund? Nowhere. So here's what I did, okay? You can do this for education, and you can also do it for the first-time home buyer plan. The government allows you to use your RRSP. So if you say to me, I don't have an RRSP, easy. If you're going to spend $10,000 on school, take the $10,000 and put it in an RRSP, and then you get a tax deduction for the RRSP, which is 21%. And then you take the money out tax-free and you put it into an education, and then you get another 21% on it. So now you're up to 42% on the $10,000. Where can you go and get an investment like that? You can't. So even if you don't have money in your RRSP, you can put the money in and get the tax receipt, and then take the money out and use it for education and get another tax receipt. That's how good it is. That to me is the best. Because when somebody tells me they don't want a loan, it means they must have the money. Because if they don't want to go for a loan, they got to have the money from somewhere. Okay? So we obviously take lines of credit. Lines of credit come from the bank. This would mean you would be a self-payer, and it means that you might be able to negotiate a better tuition from us because you're going to pay us probably all at once because it's coming off of a line of credit. Especially if it's a home line of credit. Right now, I don't know what you're paying for your mortgages, but right now, home lines of credit are like 1-2%. They're like really inexpensive. Okay. I won't spend a lot of time on that. Line of credit, self-payment are the same, right? Because you're paying out of your pocket. Okay. RSP I talked a little bit about because that's the one that I'm the hottest on. I just think if you can make 42% on $10,000, and then pay it back. I just think it's a fantastic thing. Does everybody understand that RSPs? Because I'll move on. RESP, you know what? RESPs, Registered Educational Savings Plans, became really popular about 20 or 25, 30 years ago in Canada. Okay? So most of the people, I think you guys are, I won't say all of you are my age, I'm 58, there's probably some that are in the 40s, whatever. They weren't around when we were young, and some of you weren't even young in the country to know about it. There may be a chance you've taken it out for your children. Nevertheless, we do take RESPs, Retirement Educational Savings Plans. It's where you put money every month away for like 18 years, and then a portion of your education is paid. Okay? So we do accept those, but most of the time our clients don't have it. I'm going to go to third-party funders next. Second career and OSAP are going to take the longest. Everybody okay so far? Okay. So third-party funders, one of the third-party funders are called second career. Third-party funders are people who will pay on your behalf for your tuition. If you're a grandfather and you pay for your grandchild's tuition, you're a third-party funder. It's just a third party, a third person who's paying. Now, we have more than second career who can be third-party funders. WSIB, have you heard of WSIB? Workers' compensation? I don't know if you're aware of this. I find that a lot of people that are newcomers to Canada don't know or don't understand this. Do you know what a WSIB is? It's very important for us.
Workers' compensation.
Correct. Every single employer pays a percentage to the government that has an agency called WSIB for workers that get hurt on the job. God forbid I hate to say this, but it happened to my friend. He lost his arm in a blender. An awful thing to happen. They paid for his rehabilitation, they paid for his arm, they paid to send him back to school and to get to work in a different job. Another example is I'm a construction worker and I've been doing it for 20 years and I pull my back out and I no longer can do that job. Workers' compensation will help pay for education to go back to school. Our company accepts WSIB students and they recognize our schools. Okay? Native Indian bands. I don't know if you know this, but they have their own funding for education for their particular bands. They have a lot of money actually for education. We qualify for it. Okay? I'm trying to think of other ones. I think I've covered most of them, but there may be a couple that are very small. Could be EI. I doubt it'll happen because it's not happening, but EI could be a third-party funder. Another one that could be a third-party funder is, the city. If you're on, you're on assistance with the city, sometimes the city will pay up to $5,000 tuition because they want to get you off. They don't want if they're paying you, you're not paying taxes. They want to get you off that and get you working and paying taxes. So let's go to the two payment options that are used the most. Okay, the first one we'll talk about is second career. Have all of you heard of second career before? It's really a buzzword that's going around right now. You heard of it? You've heard of it, sure. No? You heard of second career? Okay, so second career. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, a 30-second piece of history, okay? So about 15 years ago, the auto industry, which still is having a problem, they could see a downsizing in Ontario, and the auto industry is very, very big in Ontario. So what they did is they implemented this service that said if you're laid off in a career path that historically looks like it's going to drop, it's going to get less, like the auto industry, they're prepared to put you back to school, pay up to $10,000 of tuition, and they're willing to pay you up to $18,000 of living expense while you go to school. A total of $28,000. It's a lot of money. What's really nice about it is it has some tax implementation problems. I'll just use that word. But it also has some other good things because Generally, the nature of somebody who wants to go to school, they don't have a lot of money. Because if they had a lot of money, they probably wouldn't go back to school to get a career path, right? So there's a process on getting second career. And there might be many of you that qualify for this. One of the things that Second Career also decided to do was help mothers. Okay? So if you had a baby and you weren't able to go to work, and now you're ready to go to work, Second Career might be for you. It depends when you had the baby. And for a lot of people that are coming to the country, this is my observation, they come to the country, and maybe if they haven't started a family, the husband goes out and tries to find work, and then the woman has a family. And then when the woman's finished building, the kids are 6, 7 years old, now time for her to go back to work. So there may be second career funding for something like that. And second career funding you don't have to pay back. Okay? So in order to find out if you qualify, it's very simple. There's a suitability questionnaire that we're capable of offering you if you come to our school, but you can also find out from the employment centers. You need a minimum of 16 points. The points are based on how long you've been unemployed, how long you've been looking for work, what's your past history, how long were you in your last job. So for example, I could come to Canada and I have a degree in business administration. And I worked in India for 20 years. Okay? And then I come to Canada, and guess what? Nobody's going to recognize my education. And the only jobs I can really find, are serving coffee and being a janitor somewhere, and it's not really what I studied. You can use those principles for second career. Because if you've been in Canada for, let's say, a year, one of the questions is, how long have you been unemployed for over 6 months? Yes. In your field. Have I been looking for work? Have you been applying for work for over 6 months in your field? Yes, I can't find anyone. So what that's saying to the government is that you're missing some of the skill sets that are required in Canada to find work, and they're prepared to invest in you. Okay? Any questions on second career? Do you think I missed anything on that?
So there are how many number of criteria?
There's about 6 criterias,
What is it?
but the biggest ones that give you the biggest numbers are how long have you been looking for work? How long were you working in your profession? Because somebody who's working in their profession for over 7 years and now they can't find work, usually it means they're missing some of the skill sets, the current skill sets. For example, believe me when I tell you this, if you have no computer skills, you're not finding work anywhere. We use computers every day. I'm looking at, we use computers like it's taped to our side. If the internet goes down, we can't work. So if you're missing computer skills or the current computer skills, why are they going to hire you when they can hire somebody who's already got those skills? Or let's say I was a bookkeeper in my country, but I never learned the computerized computer skills, using the computer. I was doing it all manually. We even have that happening in Canada for people who work for one employer for 20 years and then he retires and it was all being done manually, and now the person can't find work because they don't know ACPAC, they don't know all the computerized software that they need. This is a perfect person who needs to go back to school, right? So there's reasons to go back to school. I'd say never go back to school if your investment, if there's no investment, unless you have a passion for something. Like if I would say to you, you're making $35,000 now, and if you graduate, you're going to make $35,000. The only reason to go back to school is if you had a passion to do that career path. And we do have that. We do have people who want to go into a career path that they really love, and they don't really care about the money. If it's the same, it doesn't matter. Any questions on second career? Did I miss something maybe on second career? Okay. And I can always answer questions. Listen, it costs you nothing. Yeah, it costs you nothing to go and speak to Nero and say, hey, tell me what the qualifications are. Do I qualify? I mean, it's free. It's a service that we provide you.
Is there an age factor in that?
Absolutely no age factor on going to school. It's against the law. We have 60-year-olds coming to our school. We have 50-year-olds coming. We have the youngest person, I won't say the youngest person, but the average age is 35 maybe? I'm looking at you because in your campus it's got to be 35.
Yeah.
So don't feel that age is a thing.
35 to 50 between those levels, mostly between.
Don't feel age is a thing, but I'll tell you why it's a benefit. We have what's called fast track programs. A little bit of selling here, which means the programs are all under 9 months. So it gets you in and out of school fast. We only train you in the courses that are applicable to the employer to be hired. So there isn't English and social studies and all these extra courses. They're just courses that the employers told us, this is what they need to learn to be employable. So it's very fast track.
When I ask you about the age factor, for example, a person is over the age of 65 and he want to go back.
You can go back to school. Absolutely.
And change the career and start
Absolutely.
life. Okay, that's good.
There's no age limit in Canada. And you know what? They'd be happy if you keep paying taxes.
Oh yeah.
To well into your 80s. No problem. So let's talk about OSAP because a lot of people do use OSAP. I really like OSAP. I did get OSAP myself back that 25 years ago. I went back to school when I was in my 30s, and I actually ended up in this profession, and I've been there ever since. And I didn't actually go to school to be an admissions counselor. So going to school isn't always gives you the outcome that you're looking for. Like I could have gone for a bookkeeper. I actually went back to school for music business administration, and when I came out, the school asked me, we need somebody in admissions, do you want to do it? I said, I need a job, yes, I'll do it. And look, 25 years later, now I'm a director and doing it, right? So it does work for you. So OSAP is based on 2 loans. It's based on what we call the Ontario student loan and the Canada student loan. And the combination of the 2 of them give you an assessment and pay you per week of study. So it depends, how much you get depends on the length of the program. It also depends on your assets, and it also depends on the cost of the tuition. How much is that tuition? When you go to a private college, the tuitions are generally almost double than what you pay in a public college. Okay, why? Because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but every student that goes to a public college, the government kicks in about $10,000 and pays the school. So that's why all these schools are advertising. They want their share of the students because they don't just get $5,500, they get $15,000. And you know what? They may be public, but they still need to pay for their lights, they still need to pay for their rent, they still need to pay for their instructors. So they're still a business, they're just not taking their profit, they're putting the profit back into the school itself. So when we do our assessments turn out totally different than people who go to the public school. Because they're only paying $5,500, you might pay with us $10,000 or $12,000. But I'm going to tell you something about that in a second. Okay, I first want to tell you the overview. So once we figure out how much the assessment is per week of study, the payment comes in 2 payments. It takes 3 weeks to get the first payment, which is usually 50% of the amount. We take 60% of the tuition. You can have 40%. 2 months later, 2 to 3 months later, the second payment comes. The other 50%, we take 40%. You take 60%. You need to budget yourself because you're going to have thousands of dollars in the bank. You might have $10,000 in the bank in 3 months, and that $10,000 has to last you for 6 months. So you need to budget yourself.
So 60% will go to the student and 40% to the institution.
Correct.
Okay. And if you don't mind, can I continue another question?
Yeah.
How much they have to pay?
I'll pick it. Thank you. Because that's the fantastic part about it. Because I want everybody to understand this. Just disregard that for a sec, because I want to get there, okay? So then you go to school, okay? 6 months after you finish school, the government says, okay, we're going to take those 2 loans, remember the Canadian student loan and the OSAP, we're going to do what's called consolidating them. We're going to put them together, and we're going to set it up as a loan in your bank 6 months after school's over. And If you haven't lied on your file, and if you've finished the program, because we have to report you if you don't finish the program. As long as you finish the program, and as long as you haven't lied on your filing, you will only have to pay back $7,300. So I want you guys to think about this. What the government has said is, if you go to a public school, we're going to pay the incentive directly to the public entity. If you go to a private college, we're not going to give the money to the school, we're going to give the money to you. That's where that $7,300 gets paid down. So you still get a tax receipt for $10,000, but you only have to pay back $7,300. Now, where did that $7,300 come? The $7,300 is based on programs that are under 40 weeks long. If a program is over 40 weeks, and I think we have one program over 40 weeks, all of them are under 40 weeks, then it does go up to about $10,500. But your assessment is much higher because the program is it's over a year, I think, actually. I'm looking at, because she knows exactly, it's 51 weeks, 52 weeks. Do you understand that? Because it's really important, because when you look at tuition, you can look at any tuition, but if you know that at the end of the day, all you're really going to have to pay back is $7,300, it almost doesn't matter what program you pick, because the government's covering the difference for you. So that brings me to one other thing that I need everybody to understand. If tuition is an investment, then it makes sense that the more money that you invest in the tuition should bring you a higher return when you graduate. And that's the way it works. I want you to think about it. If I decided to go become a doctor and I went to U of T, how much would I pay a year to become a doctor? Probably would cost me $120,000, $140,000 by the time I'm finished to become a doctor. How much do doctors make? Okay? So the reason I bring that up is because there's a difference between cost and price. Cost is what you pay. Price is what happens afterwards. Okay? So if you're only looking at cost, then you're not looking necessarily at the price. What you pay afterwards. A simple example, he wants to paint this room. He finds paint that's $5 a can. And there's other paint that's $10 or $15 a can, but he doesn't want to spend that. He figures, $5 a can, it's good enough. He paints the walls, and then all of a sudden he realizes that when people brush up against it, then the wall marks. So the paint job is only good for a year, because in a year, the walls are all marked again from people rubbing up against the wall, right? If he would have spent the $15 a can, that doesn't happen. You can scrape up against the wall, there's no mark, and the paint job lasts for 5, 6, 7 years. So, we're funny buyers. Sometimes we just look at the price and not the cost. What do we spend afterwards? Public school is like that. Public school, you look at the price and go, geez, I'd rather spend $5,500 and not $10,000. That's without really doing your research. First of all, that $10,000 becomes $7,300. The $10,000 brings you back at least $2,100 in tax deduction. If you put that onto that loan, all of a sudden now you only have $5,300 left. Right? So all of a sudden you haven't paid anything more than going to a public college. But here's the biggest difference. The biggest difference is, and this is on the internet, you guys can research it yourself, the highest completion rate in any public college right now is 55%. Can you believe that? We're all paying for that. 55%. We start 100 students at George Brown, and only 55% complete the program, but yet they've collected money for 100 people. And then they say 90% find work. 90% of the 55% find work. Because the other ones can't find work because they didn't complete the program. Private colleges have over a 90% completion rate and a 90% hiring rate. So why wouldn't you spend your money on a place where you are ensured that you'll complete a program at a higher rate? For me, I think there's something wrong with that. I think there's something wrong if there's a classroom and you lose 45 students out of 100. I just think there's something wrong with the way it's being taught. That's my opinion. And I'm upset about it, not because I work in the private school industry, I'm upset about it because I'm a taxpayer. And all of us are paying taxes for these people to go to school, and then they drop out, but the university keeps the money. If you don't drop out of the first 3 weeks, the university gets to keep all the money. So I don't know, I don't disagree with that. So OSAP, what did I miss with OSAP? I went off on a tangent. So OSAP is filed with us. The wonderful thing about OSAP as well is it costs you nothing to come in and get an assessment. We can actually do an assessment based on numbers and tell you approximately what you would be able to get. I will tell you this, those weekly assessments, depending on your assets, for people that are married or single parents, are $675 per week of study. It's very high, isn't it? It's very, very high. What does that mean? Is a person who goes for a 36-week program, a lot of the time can qualify for between $21,000 and $24,000 for taking the course. And how much do you have to pay back? $7,300. So you almost get $15,000, $16,000 free money. Where can you go and get that type of free money, right? So keep that in mind as well. I don't think I missed anything for OSAP. I do suggest, if it isn't you and it's somebody else, bring them in and get all the information and be educated on it, understand it. I don't think there's anything else that I have on that.
There's one thing about OSAP I want to ask you.
I think I've done all of this, yeah. These are just movies that I've explained to you. Any questions on funding?
Yeah, like who gets the approval for those for the OSAP funds?
You'll get approval immediately as you file. When we file, it'll actually tell you based on what we've submitted how much you're going to get. The only way you won't get OSAP is if you've got it before and you've defaulted, because there's no reason to default. If you can't afford to pay your OSAP, you just have to tell the bank. And for 3 months at a time, they will not do anything. So people who have defaulted literally have run away from their loan. Because you don't even have to run away from the loan. You can tell the bank, I'm not working and I need to get loan interest relief for 3 months. The bank says, fine. 3 months, come back and see us. Tell us if you can pay in 3 months. If in 3 months again, you can't pay, as long as you report you can't pay, you could go your whole life without paying your student loan. So these people that have defaulted have actually made sure that they didn't pay and didn't stay in communication. And one thing that I've learned in my life, at least in Canada, is that if you owe money and you can't pay it, the worst thing you can do is disappear. You need to go to that person and say, I can't pay it, I can only afford to pay you $10 a month right now, and that's it. But at least I can pay you something. If you totally disappear, that's when you have problems.
I have two questions.
Yeah, sure.
One is there any other deduction than the tax, 21% or 31% of the other deductions from your paycheck, like CPP?
Well, CPP and EI, you actually can get them back if you haven't used them, right? So that deduction becomes deductible to your income. I'm not an accountant, but that's what happens. I don't know if I answered for you, but when we pay CPP and we pay EI, at the end of the year on our T4, it tells us how much we've paid. And when we file our taxes, the government says you can deduct those payments from your gross income to bring down your income and not pay tax on it.
Which has not been used by that person.
It doesn't matter if if it hasn't been used. But even if it has been used, you can still deduct it because you'll pay taxes on the EI. They just don't deduct enough money. They deduct, I think, 10%, and they should deduct at least 20%. So sometimes people have a problem at the end of the year. They were on EI and they've had the 10% deducted, and then all of a sudden they owe another $2,000, $3,000, and they didn't know that they would. And it's because there is no 10% tax bracket. The lowest is 21%. So if they don't deduct it, you're going to still have to pay it.
What I have experienced that my tax bracket was 21%, but my deductions were 30%.
Were they?
Yeah.
I don't know how to comment on that because I didn't see paperwork. And I'm not an accountant.
The other question is,
Yes.
is there any investment invest, then our income tax, they do not deduct from that investment. Like RRSP, RESP, they give us some choice to pay later on.
Yeah,
But later on, for the customer, that is a problem. When we retire, then they say, okay, this is your income.
mhm.
Those are your money, maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000 you deposit in the bank or in your investment.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not a bookkeeper or an accountant, but what you're telling me is incorrect. So I hope you don't mind, I'm not trying to in any way disrespect you, but you only pay, when you retire and you draw money from your RSP, you only pay the tax rate at which you're deducting. So for example, if you decide that you want to take $36,000 a year out of your RSP, that's what you pay taxes on. So the lowest amount you want to take out to pay the least amount of taxes. So when you're telling me about amounts that you wouldn't have to pay taxes if you had $200,000, unless you took the whole $200,000 out, and then that would be the right thing to do. You'd probably want to take it out over several years so that you pay a lower tax
If
rate.
you kindly let me complete my question.
Please.
So what happens in the investments? That either it is 10,000, either it is 100,000, whatever the tax. The tax has not been deducted from the client's investment, and that is deferred up to the end when he draws money back.
Okay.
Okay. Then on the retirement, when someone retires, so all the incomes are asked. All the incomes, your house rent, this, and those incomes are included as an income, that those investments are included as the incomes, not my investment, not my saving. So they, then you are deprived of from GIS, OAS, and maybe you suffer from your pension.
I mean, again, it'd be so hard for me to offer you an honest answer because I don't know your situation. I know that, I can tell you what I know what a lot of other people do, and again, I can't help you do it. But my mother has a lot of money. She owns properties. She's probably worth about $30 million. She has all her investments in a company. And her company pays her so much per year, and the rest stays in the company, and she, there's a different tax rate for that. Okay? But I'm sorry, I can't help you. I would have to sit down and find out so much more about your information.
Okay, just one more.
Sure.
Is there any kind of investment where we can invest with paying the tax right now? If I am investing from my pay, monthly, some percentage, so but my choice will be that I will pay the tax.
Yeah.
So
The only thing that I would know of is you can pay, if you want, prepay your taxes
Yeah.
quarterly.
yeah.
If I was in your situation, that's probably what I'd think to do from my knowledge. But again, I would suggest you go to an accountant. Because it sounds like if you've got a lot of income, you want to shelter as much taxes to pay. And I'm afraid I can't help you.
I don't want to interrupt, but there is more questions at the end. So can Nero be coming after you?
I'm finished.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just want to tell you guys something that, even though I look like I'm just Canadian, I have a lot in common with you. And where's my commonality is that I'm first generation Canadian. Both my parents came to Canada, one from Czechoslovakia and one from Belgium. When they met, they didn't even speak English. I don't know how they communicated, but they ended up getting married. And so I grew up in an immigrant household, and also where English is a second language. And so helping people that are new to Canada or that have been in Canada, this is a passion that I have of mine. This is really why I work for Canadian
Thank you
College.
very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.